Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Scott Crawford. I teach U.S. history here at Lamar High School. You may have me in your class right now, or you may be in one of the other U.S. history teachers. I'm also recording this during the coronavirus time, but you may be getting this in the following school year. So either way, we're going to talk today about World War II, and there's several topics that World War II would cover. We're going to talk today a little bit about the causes, a little bit of stuff, things about the European theater and the Pacific theater. What we're not going to talk about today a lot is what happened in the United States, as well as what happened during the war, as well as what happened after the war, the aftermath of the war. Those things you can get in class. Really, we're going to be focused just on the actual war. It's the causes in the war itself today. So if you'll join me, I'm ready to go here. Okay, so anyway, here we are. Here we are. Causes of World War II. Some of these you probably know from other classes. And let's get my pointer ready here. There it is. And we can go right to that right there. That guy, I'm sure you know, Hitler. We also have Mussolini and Tojo from Japan. We've got some things. I'm going to go really fast through this. You probably have some sort of Google sheet or Google Doc to fill out some questions. So feel free as this is going along to have this open in one window and those questions open in another window. And feel free to pause and retract or rewind as you go. I know you don't rewind on a computer, but and everything. So kind of the overview of World War II is about 55 million. People died. People thought World War I was the worst it could ever be. Here are the countries that are involved: Germany, Italy, and Japan. They're called the Axis powers. The bad guys were called the Central Powers in World War I, but this Germany is the one that's key to both of them. So here's some things we'll talk about later. Anyway, the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I, it's the one that punished Germany. If you were here for my last lesson, we talked about that, or you probably heard about it in class. Germany had to accept full blame for World War I, plus the big deal is had to pay there and everything. It doesn't actually say that right there, but they had to pay many billions of dollars in what are called reparations, which is actual payments to the winners of World War I there and everything. So it was really a direct cause of World War II there. So if you have a question about that, it's going to be probably located right there. Feel free to pause right there if you need to. A few years after World War I was over, the Great Depression started. It wasn't just Germany; it was here too, as we talked about. But there's governments are becoming unstable, and it really sets the stage for people like Hitler to take control of the country of Germany there and everything. He promised. He didn't go in promising to persecute Jewish people. He went in promising to fix the economy, and he actually did. And so that's why he was able to take power and everything. So Italy also had a dictator, Mussolini, who's right there. Il Duce in Japan has military general Tojo takes power in Japan. They of course had an emperor as well, but anyway, rising of dictators in Nazi Germany in the 1920s. He names himself the supreme leader. And this is kind of what I was talking about. Germans were desperate for the economy to improve, and a lot of Germans were bitter about that Treaty of Versailles. There's Hitler performing there. In 1940, this is after the war had already started, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed a pact, and they're part of one unit. And as in World War I, the United States is trying not to get involved in this thing. We're trying to stay out of it. So we always think because we're on the other side of the world from this, that we can stay out of stuff pretty easily. And this is Germany, Italy, and Japan there. We'll talk a little bit about Japan. Japan's a small island country and doesn't have a lot of natural resources. Mainly oil is what they're kind of desperate for. So they invaded China in 1931. We don't like the fact that they're becoming aggressive like that. And Germany is kind of doing the same thing. It's invading Australia, annexing, and it takes Czechoslovakia as well and everything. So they had the Germans and Russians, who were the Soviets, had a non-aggression pact at this time. And why aren't they stopped? It's because everybody wanted to avoid another war. Everybody was afraid that another war was going to start. And that concept is called appeasement. It's when you give somebody who's acting aggressively something so that they won't keep doing what they're doing. And as you know from just growing up, it usually doesn't work. If you don't stop that person that's being aggressive or that country that's being aggressive, it's just going to get worse. So World War One begins in 1939, where Hitler and Germany invade Poland. Great Britain and France declare war on Germany to try to help Poland, and here we are back in the United States trying to stay out of the whole thing. Somebody has made a map with a lot of things there. So anyway, let's go to, oh, there's some football action right there. Let's go to this one right here. Let's just use this one to just review a little bit. And Hollywood Henderson, if that's not going to open. There it is. Here we go. Here we go. We're just going to look at the first slide of this. We're going to look at three different ones here. What was the initial cause of World War II? And it's the invasion of Poland, and that's what causes the war. And of course, there's a list of reasons we're going to get involved too. We'll get into later. What is appeasement is when you give somebody things that they want, you give in to them to try to avoid conflict. You know that never works. And what's the U.S. policy on war in 1939? And somebody, oh yeah, we're going to try to stay out of it. We'll try to be neutral or isolationist. Is a very popular thing in the United States. And then, what is the reason for us getting in? It's on December 7th of 1941. The Japanese are going to attack us at Pearl Harbor, which is in Hawaii, which we owned. So the reason they do that is because they were trying to get at oil that was there, and they didn't have any oil. So, that's going to be our next question. I'm jumping ahead of myself there. Yeah, we had cut off their oil supply with an embargo. Okay, let's go to the next thing. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening during the war in Europe, and it may take me a minute to get to. Let's close that one. Let's close that one because we won't be needing that anymore. It's more football action there. There we go. We want European theater. That's the one we want. So it'll take a second to open here. Just have that open for the music. All right, let's go to it. I'm going to be going pretty fast through this. So anyway, if you need to pause, feel free to do so and everything. The European theater is just what we say when we refer to the war in Europe, because it's in two different parts of the world. In Europe, really, and Africa. And then the other part of it is in the Pacific Ocean. That's us fighting against Japan. So anything where we're fighting against in Europe, that's going to be against the Germans. This man here, not me, the man behind him is George Marshall. He's an Army Chief of Staff and he's a general that's an advisor to Franklin Roosevelt, who was the president at the time. Germany's seen as a larger threat. And I can tell you that it's because the British were fighting against them, and Britain's our strongest allies. In 1944, Germany had taken over much of Europe, and this is where we strike back and we form a combined group of countries, the allies with us, France, even Canada, and we invade. This is France right here, and this map shows where we invaded, and it was a surprise attack against Germany, who's shown by that tank right there. It was more than one tank, obviously. So anyway, that's what D-Day is called, and we're going to start squeezing. Germany had taken over most of France at that point, and we're going to start pushing back to the right this way. And then the Russians are actually going to push back from the east from the other side. There's Eisenhower. He'll later become the president. And yeah, that's what it says there. And let's see if this has any moving parts here. This is the D-Day invasion. Yeah, I have a tendency to start, this is where we actually attacked, and as it says there, there's the D-Day invasion. It was the largest single invasion of any group in history. There, everything. That's kind of what some of the stuff looked like. Those are there to prevent boats from going on shore and everything. We had the most casualties. What was a success for the Americans, even though we lost 2,200, they also lost a lot, and it does allow us to get a toehold into Europe there and everything. We get past the defenses, start unloading everything. There's General Patton that we don't talk a lot about in this class, but he helps lead troops through France. This is considered the turning point of the war for the Allies, and now Germany's fighting against the Russians on one side and us on the other. So the Battle of the Bulge is one we don't talk a lot about in this class either, but this is the largest battle of the war. There, having 600,000 American troops there and everything. Close to the end of the war. VE Day refers to Victory in Europe Day. So once Hitler is trapped by us on one side and the Soviets on the other side, he commits suicide in the bunker. Germany surrenders, and that's called VE Day. And now our attention can all go to the Pacific side, where we've been fighting all along. But, our army was divided up. Army and Navy were divided up. That man's going to town there. And there's some celebrations. What's next after Hitler? Now we got to go after Japan. So there's some questions there. We'll get to that. We'll do those in class. Let's go to the Pacific side, and then we'll quit for today. There, Pacific Theater had those pulled up there. All right, here we go. All right. And of course, this was going on since December 7th, 1941, us fighting against the Japanese, but it's really just us. The other allies really aren't involved in this. That shows the red shows everything Japan had taken over. Remember, they're doing this because they need oil and other natural resources, but mostly oil. This one is going to be problematic for us later. It's Indochina, but that's also has another name, which is Vietnam, that we'll talk about later in the 1960s. So here's an essential question. How did we achieve victory in the war for the Pacific? One group that had taken place before the war were called the Flying Tigers, and they're a group of American pilots that flew to Japan where Japan was attacking them and helped the Chinese, their volunteers defending Chinese. They're Flying Tigers. That's a question you'll probably see on a test. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. One event that happened during the war is, although we were successful in winning the war, we did lose an early battle in the Philippines at a place called Bataan. And when the Japanese won, they made our soldiers march about 60 miles through the jungle, and you can see a couple of them down there. And that's actually illegal to do during a war. You're not allowed to make soldiers be slaves or force them on any kind of forced march or whatever. So, but the Japanese just didn't care. So, all right. Anyway, that was a defeat that we had, and about 5,000 Americans die in this thing. Battle of Midway. Midway is not a big island, but it's strategic in its importance. It's a refueling stop. And our code breakers, which are called, some of them are called Navajo code talkers, they figured out that Japan wanted to attack our naval base at Midway. We have radar that they don't have. That's one big concept of the war, is that we have radar and sonar, and Japan does not have that yet. That's a new technology. And they really couldn't figure out how we knew where stuff was going to be happening. Our strategy is called island hopping. Here's Hawaii, right here where my pointer is. And you can see that we're trying to take these islands. We're trying to get over to Japan, like piece by piece. It's called island hopping. My own grandfather, both of them actually participated in this during the war. I had one grandfather that was in the Army and one that was in the Marines. And they both participated in that island hopping strategy. And we're trying to get, like I said, get our way back to, get our way to Japan. That's going to involve us invading Japan. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It is a costly plan. It involves a lot of deaths for us and everything, but it's really the only way to do it because there's no way to get over there. Oh, I mentioned this earlier. Navajo code talkers, somehow we figured out that the Japanese could not crack Navajo language for some reason. And so we had some Navajo Native Americans who were living in the United States that worked on our side, obviously, and they helped us win the war by transmitting our battle plans. They couldn't break the code, and everything. This picture up here is a reunion of those code talkers taken sometime in about the 1980s or so. So anyway, kind of a big deal. Don't worry, you don't have to know any Navajo words in this class, though. Invading Japan. Let me backtrack just a little bit down to here. By the time we get over to this part, right about there, we start thinking about, okay, are we going to invade Japan? Well, the idea of invading Japan was not appealing because their culture was they would not give up. They had already announced, we will fight to the death and not give up. And so it was thought that to invade Japan and defeat them was going to cost us 1 million American lives to get them to finally surrender. So we had a plan, and that is the atomic bomb. And we've been testing that over in New Mexico. And FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, the president at the time, had ordered the development of this new weapon. It was all very secretive and everything. Well, Franklin Roosevelt dies in 1945, and the new president is Harry Truman, who's right there. And as we're getting close to Japan, Truman makes the decision to there's two of them he drops. He drops one on, and it's out of order. He drops one on Hiroshima first, then Nagasaki. But he makes that decision to do that. And we did warn the Japanese first that we were going to blow up two of their cities completely if they did not surrender. And they said, okay, go right ahead. And we did. And then after the second one, which is 3 days after the first, they surrendered. there and everything. Now, this isn't the end of that story. It initiates an arms race with the Soviet Union, who is on our side during this war. Not that we like them, but they're on our side during the war, but immediately we become rivals with them. We never actually drop any more bombs. These are the only two atomic weapons that have ever actually been used in a war, thank God, because now we would just blow ourselves up. And everything. There's a picture of Hiroshima after it used to be a city, kind of like you think of like Dallas with skyscrapers or whatever today. But anyway, that was completely blown to the ground there. There's a map. You can feel free to pause if you'd like to look at more detail there and everything. Some of the leaders include George Marshall, who we talked about, Douglas MacArthur. We'll talk about him when we get to Korea. Admiral Nimitz, who's actually from Texas, and then President Truman there and everything. Feel free to pause on any of those you need to. But anyway, that's my piece for today about World War II. That's obviously not everything. You're going to learn more about the home front of World War II, as some of the things that happened as a result of World War II and stuff in class. So anyway, look forward to seeing you around. If you have any questions, feel free to ask your teacher or to come talk to me about it, and we will see you soon. Thank you.